boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. One last look at the Holly Holm versus Ochoa-Vega fight. What the fans think about it, quote unquote, is about to destroy her. Who is about to destroy who? Ex-UFC bantamweight champion Holly Holm boxes unbeaten Ochoa-Vega tomorrow night on the undercard of Paul versus Chavez as boxing fans give their predictions. Holm made her name in the UFC when she knocked out Ronda Rousey to win the UFC bantamweight title, while she was unable to retain the belt in her very next fight after losing to Miesha Tate. Rousey was never the same, as she lost to Amanda Nunes before leaving the UFC. Holm had the chance to win the belt again, but came up short against Chris Cyborg and Amanda Nunes. Still, that night that she took on and took out Ronda Rousey in dominant fashion has to be one of the more iconic sports moments I've ever witnessed, and that's got to be one of the bigger upsets ever seen in the octagon, in the UFC. Holly Holm is not the same fighter. Having lost 3 from her last 4 UFC fights, she is coming off a defeat against Kayla Harrison as she left the UFC. Now, a switch to boxing could, theoretically, reinvigorate her career. Yolanda is undefeated with an unblemished 10-0 record. However, she only has 1 knockout to her name. All of her fights have been in her native Mexico, as she must beat Holm in her backyard of the United States to come out victorious. I hate the nerves leading up to it. Every fight it's like, why do I do this? That's what makes the wins so great. You go through such a big challenge, people don't understand what it's like. We're doing things that others can't even fathom. How do you feel leading up to it? After a victory, nothing has as much nerves, anxiety, or excitement as this, and that's what I love about it. You're feeling alive. I love that. So to be in the Hall of Fame and come back and win would be huge. It absolutely would, but I've my reservations about what's going to happen tomorrow night since Holly Holm, experienced as she is, more experienced than Ochoa-Vega by a lot, still hasn't fought in a boxing ring in about 13 years, and she is in her early 40s. She hasn't boxed in 13 years, and she is 13 years older than Yolanda. Yolanda, who's not a small woman, by the way, she's full-sized, full-figured. From Mexico. Looks very strong. An orthodox fighter to Holly Holm, who is a southpaw. And what I remember of Holly when she was boxing was she was a mover and she was a jabber, an outside fighter, and she was good at that. But 13 years away from the sport, how is she going to come back? We don't know. Nobody does. Sporting a professional record of 33 wins with 2 losses, 3 draws, 9 knockouts, having been knocked out 2 times in 38 professional bouts. It's a mystery as to how Holly Holm will return, having not boxed in such a long time. She hinted at certain changes and certain small tweaks, tricks that she picked up along the way during her time in the octagon. Will any of that translate in the boxing ring? This is a big opportunity for her to turn over a new leaf in the boxing ring. Having been in the sport before the money and the major promotional outfits came in, this is a big opportunity for Holly Holm, but just as well, it's a big opportunity for Yolanda. If you're in Yolanda's shoes, you're fighting an aging fighter who was on a losing streak in a different discipline and hasn't fought in this one in a very long time. That Mexican spirit, that fighting spirit, how Mexican fighters travel to all these different parts of the world, upsetting the apple cart for Americans and upsetting the apple cart for the Brits. I've seen Yolanda in action. I've seen the tape on her, and I would not count her out in this situation. It is not a foregone conclusion that Holly Holm's return to the sport of boxing will be a successful one, that this story will have a fairy tale ending. Holly was last in a boxing ring in May of 2013 opposite the ring Mary McGee, who she decisioned, whereas Yolanda was in action more recently in March of this year opposite the ring Claudia Lopez, who she decisioned in a 10-rounder. And I've no bold presuppositions about what's going to happen. No bold predictions. I'm going to be paying close attention, but I can't tell you with any certainty what is going to happen tomorrow night when Holly fights Yolanda. Yolanda is a big girl, strong, young, not as many miles on the odometer. What if she overpowers Holly Holm the way that Sophie Ann Mathis did so many years ago? Holly has been stopped before. The moral of the story is, This could be a big moment for Holly Holm, and a chance to make more money from boxing on bigger stages than she's ever been on as a boxer. But it's not a foregone conclusion that she makes it there. It just isn't. She's coming back to a sport that is a lot more competitive than it used to be when she was fighting. There's a lot more talent out there now, and you just don't know. So I'm going to be paying close attention to what happens tomorrow night. No bold predictions from me. Elsewhere on that card, Tevin Farmer versus Floyd Schofield. That's a tale as old as time. Old lion versus young lion. Anaheim, California. Youth versus experienced has generated an array of boxing's most intriguing matchups, and Saturday's renewal pitting former junior lightweight champion Tevin Farmer against unbeaten contender Floyd Schofield contains all that criteria, with Farmer versus Schofield set to open the deep Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez pay-per-view card at the Honda Center. The banter between the fighters took over Thursday's news conference and heightened the anticipation for their lightweight bout. The 22-year-old Schofield, 18-0 with 12 KOs, is returning from a controversial 11th hour withdrawal from fighting three-weight world champion Shakur Stevenson in February, as his father claimed he was poisoned in Saudi Arabia, just to walk back all of those claims and reject a $2 million offer to fight Abdullah Mason. Tevin Farmer, 34, has lost 3 of his consecutive narrow decisions to current IBF champion Raymond Muratalla and back-to-back razor-thin affairs against top-ranked William Zapadia. There is a divide between those fighters and his Saturday opponent, Farmer insists. "You watch boxing, right?" Farmer asked moderator and DAZN broadcaster Todd Grisham. "You know why. Think about it. Tevin Farmer against Kid Schofield. You know why. What does he do great that I haven't seen? We're gonna test his composure, test everything about him. He's stepping in there with Tevin Farmer. I've got so much skill he hasn't seen. There's nothing he can test me on that I haven't been through. He's not stronger than me, not smarter. He's not Cepeda, not former champions and former foes, Jojo Diaz and Jose Pedrazia. It is true what Tevin is suggesting. Floyd is not as experienced now as those fighters were when they fought Tevin Farmer. But at the same time, Tevin Farmer is not now who he was years ago when he was champion. He is on a losing streak after all. And that's why, in spite of all of Floyd Schofield's ducking, because that's what he's been doing, I still like this fight. When Floyd Schofield expressed confidence and pointed to his record against Farmer's 33-8 with one draw ledger, the Philadelphia native answered, "You can tell you don't know anything about boxing when you talk about records. You were built by a promoter that put you in front of the right people to get knocked out. They know you don't punch hard. My last 7 opponents were all hurt. 3 got knocked out. 5 touched the canvas. Ooh. And they're all more elite than you. Remember when I was champion? You were a kid studying. Don't lose control, youngin'. I'm going to bring a belt to the ring. I'm going to make your daddy proud. Some blood's got to be shed. After that, I'm gonna pat you on the back, tell you to keep your head up and keep going." At that point, promoter Jake Paul advised the sides to save it for Saturday, ranked 10th in the WBA behind number 2 rated Schofield and belt holder Gervonta Wank Davis. Farmer understands the gravity of his bout as an opportunity to rise toward another title shot after standing as IBF super featherweight champion from 2017 to 2020. I used to be that way, wanting to fight the best, but at this point I'm a veteran, so I go with the flow and fight who's in front of me. Everything after that comes later, Farmer said. All that hollering for future fights, I save that for the young boys. You already know I'll fight the best, and there's not even a question. Sure isn't. From Raymond Muratalla to 2 William Zapata fights to a fight with Floyd Schofield, unbeaten fighter after unbeaten fighter, and Tevin Farmer gave every single one a difficult time. Remember that this is not a Golden Boy promotion show. And Floyd Schofield is not the house fighter here. Remember that they're both mid-range to inside fighters. You could argue that Floyd is an offensive specialist and Tevin at that proximity is a defensive specialist. Tevin Farmer has impressively cultivated a thriving career as a high-end gatekeeper who gave the iron-handed Zepeda fits by dropping him in the 4th round of their split decision bout last year and forcing a rematch decided by a majority decision. I can't make sure I win unless I can fight and judge, Farmer said. I can only put on my best performances, and then, whatever the judges do, the fans will know what really happened. That's probably all that matters. If this fight wasn't on TV, I probably wouldn't take it. I don't know that any of my recent opponents proved themselves because none of them dominated and really beat me, Farmer said. They did well against me. I look at it as if I'm the guy they've got to beat to go up. The promoters know what it is. When you've got these young guys coming up with promoters behind them, in cahoots with the judges, you know how it is, how the politics work. At this point, I'm having fun with this. I go in and do my thing. Why not fight and make money while I'm doing it? This fight is right on time for Floyd Schofield, in spite of all his ducking Shakur and ducking Abdullah Mason. At this point in Floyd's young career, this is the kind of fight he's supposed to be in against a seasoned veteran and a former champion. This is an adequate acid test. Schofield remained coy about what happened in Saudi, telling reporters he didn't want to repeat a complicated episode that appears to remain in dispute. I don't really want to get into what happened in Saudi. I'm just glad to be back. I want to leave that stuff in the past and look forward, Schofield said. I'd like to run it back and get my opportunity against Shakur. Schofield did divulge that the cancellation of a title shot shook him. It's being shook why that fight didn't happen. When I first got back from Saudi, I was a little sad because I made my baby son a promise that I'd get the green belt and we'd go to Disneyland, he said. I didn't get to fulfill that. Coming back with nothing to show for it put me in a very bad, depressed state. I was glad I had my dad, my fiance, and my son. The Farmer fight will be decided by my youth and will. I'm faster, stronger, and levels above Zepeda. I look forward to showing that off Saturday. I hate talking and just want to show it, Schofield said. I feel like he's underestimating me. No, I think they're underestimating Tevin, because when you pull out on Shakur and you turn down $2 million for Abdullah, but you go with Tevin, it's because you think you can beat Tevin. It's because you view Tevin as a safer fight. So, if anybody's underestimating anybody, I think the Schofields are underestimating Tevin. Tevin Farmer let Schofield know at the news conference that stepping up to this level as a young fighter competing with a veteran like me is another level. I'm gonna knock you out, Schofield told Farmer, to which Farmer answered, you ain't doing that. What are the odds that Floyd Schofield can knock out Tevin Farmer where Raymond Muratalla, where William Zepeda in 2 fights? Could not. What are the odds that Floyd Schofield can? And even if he does, how much credit should we give him given what challenges he has already avoided? It is a genuinely intriguing situation, and being honest, it's not actually a foregone conclusion that Floyd wins. His daddy has garnered him a lot of negative press for not being able to keep his trap shut. What is it with these American boxing dads? They like the camera time a little bit too much, writing checks that their sons' asses can't cash. So is the check gonna bounce this weekend? We'll see. Men's super middleweight news. Andy Reid boldly reveals how Hamza Sheeraz will dominate Edgar Berlanga on July 12th. It's going to be a big weekend of fights. On the 11th, we have the Taylor versus Serrano 3 card. And on the 12th, we got the big show in New York City from Turkey El Sheikh, British super middleweight sensation. Hamza Sheeraz faces a fierce challenge on July 12th as he squares off against heavy-hitting Edgar Berlanga in New York. The pair is set to headline the iconic Louis Armstrong Stadium as the ring makes history by becoming the first organization to promote a boxing event at the legendary venue. Both fighters have already traded heated words in the build-up, each exuding confidence in outclassing the other on fight night, with hopes of earning a future title shot after the undisputed showdown between Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford.
this September.
It all depends on who wins the Crawford versus Canelo fight. If Canelo wins, yeah, maybe Hamza gets the shot. But if Terence Crawford upsets the apple cart and pulls off this miracle, I hardly see a 37 going on 38-year-old Crawford sticking around. He might retire right after that.
To get there, Hamza's got to beat Edgar Berlanga first. Edgar Berlanga, who suffered just one defeat in his 24-fight professional career, a unanimous decision loss to Canelo in their 2024 showdown in Las Vegas, though you'd never know it, the way that Edgar took a victory lap right after that.
Ridiculous.
Hamza Sheeraz returns to action after falling short in his bid for the WBC middleweight title, with many believing champion Carlos Adames had done enough to win, despite the judges declaring it a draw, ending his 21-fight unbeaten streak. The 26-year-old has since shaken up his camp.
Left Ricky Funes for Andy Ree.
Teaming up with renowned trainer Andy Lee in Ireland in hopes of joining the list of fighters Lee has successfully rebuilt after their setbacks.
It is true that Hamza Sheeraz did not look his best against Carlos Adames, but how many times have we already seen Edgar stink out the joint? With Marcelo Coceres, with Steve Rolls, with Romer Angulio.
He actually bit that guy.
Out of frustration, that even if Hamza Sheeraz did not look his best with Carlos Adames, we could say the same thing about Edgar in a lot of situations, in a lot of fights, and he only made it to a Canelo Alvarez fight by avoiding every credible threat in the division, staying unbeaten long enough to sell his O to Canelo Alvarez in a fight that he hardly deserved. Now, Andy Ree says Sheeraz will KO Berlanga early. Andy Lee has emerged as one of boxing's most sought-after trainers in recent months, having guided Joseph Parker's rise from heavyweight outsider to world title contender with a string of standout performances. Following that success, Lee also took the reins for boxer sensation Ben Whittaker's rematch with Liam Cameron, a bout that saw Whittaker deliver a commanding first-round stoppage to silence his critics. The former WBO world middleweight champion believes Sheeraz could follow in Whittaker's footsteps in his upcoming bout, securing an early stoppage win of his own. People's character reflects their fighting style, and he's emotional and erratic, said Lee about Berlanga, following his outbursts at the launch press conference. Discussing his fight as preparation, he added, "You talk about leaving no stone unturned. That's exactly what he's doing. It wouldn't surprise me if Hamza knocks him out early."
Yeah, I think Hamza would be doing us all a favor. He'd be doing us all a gift if he went in there and knocked this guy's block off, because Edgar Berlanga is everything that's wrong with American boxing today. The fighters that are in this side of the world pretending that they're God's gift while demanding the most money possible for the least amount of effort and the least amount of ambition. He only wanted to fight Canelo for the payday. He never actually tried to win that fight, and the rest of the time, he's avoiding everybody else.
Would seem that Turkey El Sheikh has a rooting interest in a Hamza Sheeraz win, and so do I, mostly because I would love to see Edgar get knocked out. I thought Canelo would be the one to do it, but he didn't.
So maybe Hamza can't.
He's got height, he's got reach, he's got power, he's got Andy Lee, and maybe that's the winning ticket and the right ingredients to seal the proverbial deal.
We'll see.